What's up, everybody? It's Carpo here. Just wanted to make a video to express my feelings about, life being hard. Life is hard. Boo-hoo. I've had some interesting things happen to me in my life, but nothing too drastic, nothing too severe. I was never beaten or maimed or imprisoned for a long period of time. Although I have been in jail and I have been abused, I have been, victimized by other people. The difference is that I've chosen not to play the victim and not to be a victim, rather. And I really want to try to stick to the subject on this video, though I didn't really make any notes for it. I just was sitting here thinking about how, life changes as you get older. And for all those, the younger kids out there, in your 20s who think, well, I understand, the important social causes of the world and where the world needs to go. Whatever delusion you may be living in, we all find out later that things are much more complicated. In other words, we might understand components of the world we live in, but it doesn't mean that we understand the best way to live in it. And that means that you can go on, we all go on pretending that we know certain things, and then we encounter things that make us question, well, is that right for everyone? I guess I didn't really think of any examples. People are very extreme in the judgments that they have about other people, and that makes it harder. For example, if I were to pose the question, do you think that there should be a law that everyone's required to be vegan? Now, most people would say, of course not. And even most vegans would say, of course not. You can't do that. But there would be at least thousands of people in the world, and I'm just guessing off the top of my head, who would say, hell yeah, I would support a worldwide law to ban the eating of meat. And this example has nothing to do with whether it's okay or not okay to eat meat, or whether you're vegan or not. It has everything to do with whether or not personal freedoms come over people's sensitivities towards the way they think that the world needs to be. So that these vegans might think that humans aren't meant to eat these things, therefore we need to impose laws to change it. And this isn't an extreme example at all, because this is exactly what's happened with religions through history. And, I try to tread lightly around religion. I don't want to insult anyone's beliefs. But I can't resist, bringing up the damage that religion has done. Not religion itself, which is neutral, and I should say it's not religion. My research over the years has shown me religion is a wonderful thing for people. It's dogma within that religion that holds people back. I've talked to Christians who don't even believe that Christ was a real person, but they take the gospel as this is the way to live. I've also talked to Christians who believe everything in the Bible literally, and that if you don't believe what they believe, you're going to hell. Even though several different factions of Christianity translate the Bible differently and interpret it differently, they fight among themselves. So in other words, this shows that, and the same with religion, like religions like Islam, with the extreme versions of it, Sharia law, which is based on just somebody's interpretation of the Quran. And it's no different than Western, it's no more corrupt or crooked than Western. So I'm sorry I'm getting into religion here, but I'm using this as an example of how people judge one another based on what they believe instantly. So anyhow, as we get older, whatever we may believe, whether you be religious and you start to question your religion as you get older, or whether you be an atheist who starts to question whether God might exist, at least you're open-minded enough to question it. So many people are afraid to even ask the questions. For example, if you're a member of an atheist forum and you say, well, what if there is some higher power? You might be attacked from all sides. They'll be like, what do you mean by higher power? There's no God. Are you a fool? You're an idiot. And people will pounce on anybody's opinion who may counteract their own. And you know what it is? It's not righteousness. It's not knowledge. It's not the fact that the other person knows better. It's the fact that we're unsure. And when we find something we can grasp onto, to believe in, we'll be damned if somebody's going to shake us from that belief. So a guy like me who's stuck in the middle can be very frustrated. I'm not a person who's religious. I'm not a person who has a particular political affiliation. You know, if I say anything bad about Trump, I'm a hardcore liberal douchebag. If I say anything, even remotely good about, say, Obama, instantly I'm a liberal douchebag, the exact same thing. Even though I can see the faults in both of them too. It's what I find is that if I'm using politics as an example, I will point out certain things that bother me, and people will use fallacies and take it out of context and not understand where I'm coming from. And so this, for me, is another factor of why I've somewhat withdrawn from society, and another depressing factor that when you're young you think you can change the world, and as you get older you find that you can, but it takes a hell of a lot more money than you've got. And it's unfortunate, it's the truth, but the average person isn't heard. So when I started this video, my intention was to really say that when a person has a voice, and especially online, this has given so much more of a voice to people who not necessarily are right, but who have a lot of interests behind promoting what they believe. So in other words, if a gas company wants to convince you that that you should have let them put an oil rig in your backyard, or talk about how it's helping the economy and how it's going to create jobs in your community, that kind of stuff. Or the Nestle bottling plant that wants to set up in the gorge here, where the citizens are resisting, but they're saying it'll bring all these jobs. Meanwhile, all the other ones in the history have shown that they don't really create that many jobs and they do more environmental damage. But people won't even look and do any research or even care. So that makes me even sink further back into my what kind of a world am I living in? To realize that I don't know everything. I don't know the answers to all the problems that we face. But I love to discuss it because it helps me to understand the world I live in. But at a certain point, it's not even worth discussing anymore. It's like nobody really knows kind of thing. But somebody always wants to know. And the one thing that I've learned is that anybody who says, well, I just don't know, we're not sure, there's always somebody else to tell them, no, this is how it is. And everyone wants to convince you that their belief system is the best, and it's almost always detrimental to believe in something that's extreme if it leans to one side or the other. That's religion, that's politics, that's relationships, that's everything in life. How many of us want to work a 9-to-5 job for the rest of our lives that we hate? No, but we're told that that's what we need to do, that that's what being a human is. It's just preposterous circle of bullshit that we're immersed in. And I guess maybe I'm just unleashing, ranting. It's been a rough year, for me. And I guess that's what I had been thinking about, was how even though I'm having a really rough time, sometimes I won't allow it to come through in my videos as being an asshole, or use this as a time to say, ooh, I want to bash this group or that group. But there are a lot of people who do have shitty moments in life. And the reason I mention that, and they do lash out and take it out on everyone else, whether it be abusing their family or friends, but if they can't do that, then they'll go reach out and abuse people on the internet. And I'm not just talking about trolls, I'm talking about some very toxic people who make videos on YouTube and elsewhere, who every single one is just about something that's wrong with the world and what's wrong with this person and that person. It's a constant string of complaints about life. And you see right through it. You're like, hey, we're all miserable. We all have some rough times. Fucking get over it, Toughen up. Thicken your skin up and find a way to see something good in it. Because if you're angering people, all you're doing is causing more conflict, because anger releases cortisol into the bloodstream. I know people would like to think that, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention, and you should get angry and then fight the power. And, to an extent, yes, but getting angry doesn't help you fight the power. It's being wise, being witty, being aware of what's going on that is going to help us to win any battles in this current atmosphere, if you will. And I want you to know, I'm not just talking about like the political situation in my country. I'm talking about the world. We're living in a technological fucking madhouse. I mean, with nuclear weapons aimed at every city, with AI on the rise and more intelligent than humans, with the potential to wipe ourselves out with a simple virus, or the flick of a switch, or a solar flare, or a gas leak. It's just unbelievable the amount of things that can go wrong. you know, it's like they say, I think it would cost, you know, $5-10 billion to reinforce the grid, something like $10 per American, and nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to fund reinforce. And what I mean by that is by taking all the major transformers and isolating them from ground currents, which could occur if there was a major solar flare, which happened in 1851. There was the Carrington event, and that's exactly what happened. It fried telegraph lines, but we didn't have electricity yet in mass. So nothing really happened in that front. If that were to happen today, it would fuck us up. Pardon my language. So nobody wants to reinforce against it and say whatever, you know, and that is kind of my metaphor and example for everything we're doing right now. Just throwing band-aids over problems. No, there's no global warming. No, there's no pollution. No, there's none of this. There's no compromise. Nobody wants to say, okay, maybe we're adding a little bit to this problem, but not all of it. Okay, well, we can talk about that. And oh, sure. Okay, so what can we do? You know, okay, well, we can't just get rid of oil tomorrow. Okay, well, then maybe we can set this plan, and, you know, that this is how things are accomplished in a world. And to me, even though it looks like a madhouse and it is chaos out there in society, it's amazing that we can function at all the way we do. I mean, if you really look at it, really look at what's going on out there, the fact that, just like driving down the highway, the fact that, yeah, you might see an accident and think, oh, there's dumbasses everywhere, but realize there's a million people driving around you that aren't crashing and that aren't dumbasses. They may be dumbasses, we're all dumbasses, but they're not. We tend to pick out and single out the one idiot that we see driving, not the thousands of people following the rules. And if you look at that in the media, if you look at that in politics, religion, if you look at how we tend to single out individuals and think that's a representative of the whole, that's the old liberal cliche that all liberals are just like hipster millennials, or the old cliche that all conservatives are white-haired, you know, tight-ass old men. It's bullshit on both fronts. And since politics are one of the main issues we have right now, that has to be addressed. And when it comes to religion, I find it to be very important too. I find nothing wrong with the fact that people want to believe, but if they're going to continue to impose their belief systems on schools, on you know, putting public interest into it, I mean, I understand the church and state are separate, fine, but you know, this church constantly goes into the state, and then they want state funding, and it happens over and over, like with the Noah's Ark replica, which, you know, got huge tax breaks. Yeah, maybe I'm blaming the church a little bit there, but it's because the people are willing to go along with assuming that the church knows what's best. But yeah, to each his own. Like I said, you know, however I feel about these things, I don't go off complaining about them constantly because it does no good. So I bid you all farewell. I'm just going to end it now because I'm probably running out of time on my camera anyway. Yep, a couple minutes left. So yeah, life can be tough sometimes. What do? You just make it through. Do your best. Try not to react too harshly to the fucked up situations we get into. Peace.